20 years ago, I want you to walk back with me for a quick story. 20 years ago, my very first boss in politics was a woman named Mizeur. She was a member of Congress from the western suburbs of Philadelphia. And she won during the Year of the Woman, 1992 at the time. A lot of new women elected into Congress, and she should have never won. She represented a district that was 5-to-1 registered Republican. She only won with 1,200 votes. And we knew that it was going to be very, very difficult for Mizeur to get reelected, and she had to really be on her game. In 1993, President Bill Clinton's budget was hanging in the balance. At the time, there was a supermajority of Democrats that represented, that were in the Congress, and Bill Clinton's presidency was hanging in the balance because with a supermajority in the Congress, he didn't have enough Democratic votes for his budget. He didn't have enough votes for his budget, and this was coming on the heels of what was perceived as a failure on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, perceived failure of, or at least a slow, sputtering start on his health reform efforts. And the press and the pundits everywhere were saying that if Bill Clinton couldn't pass his budget in 1993, his presidency would be over. He would be a one-term president. It was all going to be downhill from there. And his budget was having problems because he was trying to bring us to a balanced budget scenario. And he was proposing raising taxes pretty significantly on the richest of the rich in this country. And guess whose Marjorie's district was? The richest of the rich. Mizeur was vote number 218, the deciding vote on President Bill Clinton's budget package. And when she walked down to the floor to cast that vote, she had already made it public that she was going to vote for President Clinton's budget package, even though she knew it was going to cost her her seat. As she marched down the aisle to make that vote, Republican colleagues were daunting her with this song of na 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 na, hey hey hey, goodbye. They knew Mizeur was walking the plank. And when people asked her afterwards why she was willing to do this, she said, because my job is to do the right thing for this country. And I got to put ego aside. It's not the most important thing that I get reelected. It's important that President Bill Clinton's presidency succeeds. And look what happened from the success of his presidency. State child health insurance programs, 23 million jobs created, the greatest prosperity and growth and innovation that our economy and our country has seen in generations. And it's because this woman had the courage of her convictions. She understood that there was a North Star right here in her chest. She had to follow her heart. She knew that in these moments, we are asked to stop and ask ourselves and go deep inside to say, what is the right thing to do? To listen to your heart. And I had my own moment while being on her staff. Fast forward another 6 months to a year. It's 1994. I'm an intern in her office. I'm a junior in undergrad. And there's a hospital that closes its doors overnight, leaving 900 people in Norristown, Pennsylvania without a job and no warning. And everybody in the office starts to really freak out. This is a bad situation for the people, and it's a bad situation politically because Mizor's already in a really tough re-election bid. What is she going to do to respond to this? And I immediately go into a place where I could resonate so well with what was happening because my dad was a factory welder his whole life, a union guy. We were struggling to make ends meet on a regular basis. I got my start in politics really as a little kid on the picket lines, standing up and fighting for working families, and always understanding very well how threatening it is to lose your job or to not have a paycheck, what that means for a family. And I sat there and I thought about these 900 families in this district that had this overwhelming sense of insecurity that came upon them that day. And I thought, God, what can I do? Now, one piece of me could have said, well, I'm the intern in the office. I should sit on the sidelines and watch and see how it's done. But Mizeur was such a great example of going into that North Star, going into your heart to figure out how to lead in these moments where you're being called to step up and help get something done for your community. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go to work and try to figure out some ideas to this. And I went to the side, I sat down at a computer, I picked up the phone, I started calling experts that I had met, and by the end of the day, I had typed out a 10-point plan of action on where we could train new workers with available Job Training Partnership Act dollars from the Department of Labor for our region, on how we could hold job fairs and get people put together for other opportunities in the district, on the fact that there is a federal law called the WARN Act that requires a 60-day notice before you can close your doors and leave people without work. The fact that Marjorie worked on, was a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee and a member of the subcommittee on oversight and investigations. Let's have a field hearing and investigate this. This is a hospital. This is a healthcare concern. This is an access issue. Laid out all of these ideas. Now, there's a piece of me, even after I had finished laying out the memo, that thought, maybe I shouldn't offer this forward. I mean, I'm just the intern. But Marjorie always asked us to step forward and do our best. I ran into the office, I knocked on the door, I said, I know I'm just the intern, I don't know if I have a lot to offer here, but I have some ideas that come from my heart, that come from my care and concern for these people, and I'd like to share them with you. And she and the chief of staff read the memo, and you know what they said? You just got yourself a job, go do it. Make this happen. And that's how I got my very first job in politics. I was supposed to go back to the University of Illinois as an intern after a 6-month stint in that office. And instead, I was one of the youngest legislative assistants on Capitol Hill. And I want you to remember and to know that those ideas that you carry in your heart every day, that passion that you have for making a difference, you've got to bring them forward and make it happen against the toughest of circumstances. When I very first got to Annapolis, the very first big bill I wanted to push through was to allow young adults to remain on their family health plans until they were age 25. And I was told that it was too big of a concept, too big of a challenge for a first-time bill for a freshman legislator. But not only did we get it done in 2007, you might recall it served as a framework for the entire congressional health reform in 2010. That is now a law across the country. For women in this state. My God, we're the wealthiest state in the country, and yet our infant mortality rates and our low infant birth weight babies, those numbers are atrocious. Baltimore and Eastern Shore, Prince George's County are huge hotbeds of problems for maternal and child health outcomes. How can we fix this? Especially at a time when the Congress is threatening to have a budget showdown over defunding family planning services at Planned Parenthood because the Republicans and the Democrats decided to make it a partisan issue. Against all odds, I reached out to the leader of the Tea Party caucus in Annapolis to say, let's do something together. I got an idea for you. What would you say, Mike Schmiegel, if we lowered the abortion rates by $2,600 a year and we saved the state $35 million annually? You'd say, well, I think that sounds good. What's the catch? I said, don't freak out when I say family planning, because this is actually where we all agree. You eliminate unwanted pregnancies, you lower the abortions, you save the state money from expenditures that aren't racked up on the Medicaid pregnancies, and you improve maternal and child health outcomes, and you empower women to have babies when it makes sense for them. And we expanded that coverage, and I need you to be the mouths to make sure that every woman that you know knows this. Every single woman who makes below $24,000 in this state, free family planning services. People said, when I wanted to take on Annapolis and make it more transparent and bring it into the 21st century for technology, no way. No way. Annapolis doesn't open itself up to citizen engagement like that. But we passed the Maryland Open Government Act. We brought you into the hearing room from the courtesy of your computer. You can watch our committee hearings online. Our websites have been updated. You don't have to pay $800 access fee to know what's going on up to the minute on our internet feeds anymore. We've opened up government to you by taking it on and doing the right thing. And let me tell you, there's probably nothing bigger to take on in Annapolis than the oil and gas industry. And yet, Maryland is the only state in the country that sits on shale gas rock that isn't fracking. Because we've looked at, because we have taken a look at every other state that has drilled first and asked questions later and said, no, we're going to have a pragmatic course here in Maryland. That we have to have safety studies in place. We have to know the impact on the environment, on public health, on the local economy in Garrett County, which is the #2 tourism industry in the state. There's an impact on all of that that can't be underestimated. We see flammable tap water in Pennsylvania, and many earthquakes in Ohio, and livestock kills in West Virginia, in states where they drilled first and asked questions later. But we have to get this one right the first time. There's too much at stake, and we have taken that on. Every single instance where we have taken these things on is because we have recognized the ability to believe in these ideas and the good behind them, and a willingness to take on a difference against all odds. And for anyone who is going to stand before you today or any day that tells you that you are the future of Maryland, I want you to laugh at them. You're not the future of Maryland. You're the now. You are the now of Maryland. I have worked with you. I have seen you in action. We wouldn't have marriage equality if it weren't for you. 5 of my colleagues in the House of Delegates, 5 of my colleagues in the House of Delegates voted for this bill after opposing it the previous year because their college age and high school kids shamed them into it. We only won by 2 votes. And then we took it out to the people, and how many of you were involved in a rally, a door knock, a phone bank, to make sure we got it, right? And we were working just as hard on the DREAM Act to make sure that everybody has equal opportunity of education in this state. And it's that same passion and enthusiasm and engagement when you know what's right that is going to have us repeal the death penalty, because state-sanctioned killings are never right. It's better than that, get paid sick days in law, because everyone gets sick and everyone deserves up to 7 days a year to be able to take time off to get better without worrying that they're going to lose their house, their apartment, their job when they do it. It's how we're going to continue to win and have a moratorium on fracking, and how we're going to get gun safety laws enacted this year. And for all of the amazing innovation and growth and progressive march that this state has been on, there is so much more for us to do. And when I think about the future and the issues that we are going to be taking on together, what excites me most about you being the now, we already have such a wonderful group of young elected officials across this state. We've got Brandon Holland, Nick Mosby, and in Baltimore, and Alonzo Washington. And I could name a lot of sitting legislators, but I look across the room right here and now, and I know that Val Panza and Stephen Hershkowitz and Sam Swerling and Andrea Morrison and James Holland, sorry, I just call him James. You know, come on, I mean, Emily Herman's here. We've got amazing young Democrats from across the state that are going to put your name in to make a difference. Because you're not waiting your turn. Because you're not waiting for someone to say, okay, here you go, it's your turn now. You've done enough toiling in the fields. I've always really appreciated, don't get me wrong, the interns and the volunteers on my campaigns who are young and willing to take on any job, from getting pizza and parking cars and knocking on doors. But it's your ideas that I have valued most. What you've brought to me in terms of what we need to advance in this state. The legislation that we've done together to make a difference in our communities. You really are the now of Maryland politics. And so, yes, we have an amazing economic record throughout this tough recession. We have a AAA bond rating, and we've closed our structural budget deficit, but we still don't have enough jobs plans out there to make sure that you're not just graduating with a degree, but you're graduating with a job. And so, cross that stage to get a diploma, that you're walking into a new job that invests in our innovation economy, that grows our green jobs, that we are going to have a new wind industry in this state, that we are going to keep producing new biomass options, that we're going to rebuild our schools. We've got the #1 schools in the nation 5 years running. But how many of our children are living in the most ridiculously haunting structural facilities, worse than prisons? Toilets that won't flush, you can't drink out of the water fountains, it's too hot or too cold depending on the season because the windows are still shut and cracked open. We've got to take on these challenges together. We have an amazing environmental opportunity with the crown jewel of national treasure of the Chesapeake Bay that continues to grow and improve. But Jamie Shoplin knows that while we're bringing the bay back to great health, there are still huge dead zones. And we have to do more to make sure that it's not just a place that we can recreate and play in, but where the watermen have a long-standing job over on the eastern shore. And while we have the wealthiest state in the country, there's still 800,000 people without health insurance. A huge, sad state of affairs, but we keep making progress, and we have been the most aggressive of any state in how we are going to implement health reform. And in 2014, all bets are off. You're going to see Maryland just completely blowing the doors down on federal health reform and getting down to a place where every single person in the state has access to good quality, affordable health care because it's a right and health care. Your ideas have been what has fueled me throughout my entire career, and I ask that you keep them coming. Ask that you continue to partner with me and my colleagues to make these things happen for the brighter future of Maryland. But I ask that you continue to see yourself as the now. Don't wait your turn. Don't wait for someone to say that you have now earned this place. Go into your heart. Find your North Star. Listen to yourself. All of your wisdom is already inside of you. All of your knowledge is already there. All the answers. We get distracted from it by all the outside things that go on in our world. It's really easy to get trapped up in our heads. That's where our insecurities are, though. That's where our frustrations are. That's where we start to doubt ourselves. If you go into your heart, carve out a place of silence to listen to yourself and that North Star that is guiding you, there is nothing that this state can continue to do. And with your help, Maryland will continue to live up to her full, strong, vibrant potential. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you have done for Maryland.